Hi, everyone, and welcome to Let's Talk Risk. I'm your host, Naveen Agarwal. Here we explore how leaders in medtech navigate uncertainty, make better risk based decisions, and build safe and effective products to support sustainable growth. Today, I'm super excited to welcome my guest, Eric Sugalski. He's the president of Tangram MedTech, where he provides services as a fractional VP of engineering to startups. He's also a founder and CEO of Ampulis, who is helping pharmaceutical companies with design and manufacturing of combo products. With that, Eric, I'm so excited to welcome you to the show. How are you today?
Hi, Naveen. I'm doing great. Thanks so much for the invite. Excited to be here.
Awesome. So, Eric, let's start by having you walk us through your career journey so far. What has brought you to this point?
Sure. So I started off as an engineer, a mechanical engineer by training. And the first decade of my career, I was really focused on design, development, manufacturing of new medical devices. And so I've worked in surgical devices, drug delivery, some diagnostic equipment, even some surgical robotics. So a pretty broad array of different technology and clinical areas. Most of my work has been in the consulting space at various product development firms. And so that's given me the exposure and experience to touch a lot of different categories, which for me has been a great path. About 16 or 17 years ago, I started a company called Archimedic, which is a contract design development firm. And I ran Archimedic as CEO for about 15 years. And so in that capacity, I was still leading the team, working on technical aspects, but also getting more into the regulatory and the commercial sides of MedTech as well, kind of realizing that you need all of those aspects in order to build a successful medical device product and medical device venture. So I ran Archimedic for a long chapter of my career. I sold Archimedic in 2024, and Archimedic is in great hands right now, doing some pretty amazing things. And right as you pointed out, I'm doing a few other things right now, some consulting through Tangram. I'm also part of a group called Robin Hood Ventures, which is an angel investment consortium in the Mid-Atlantic region, where I'm involved in investing in a number of early stage medical device companies.
Yeah, that is exactly what I find so fascinating about your background, that you understand almost all aspects of medical technology, combo products, and you know what it takes to make a business successful. So, Eric, I want to start by asking you to just give us a overview of the landscape that we are living in, whether it's pharma or medtech. I think technology is moving so fast. It's changing our world, is it not?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially with AI and a lot of innovations that are taking place with data science, not only in kind of embedding those technologies inside of products, but also really accelerating the development of new medical devices using these technologies to move faster through design development, which comes with some positives. You can go fast, you can maybe streamline certain activities, but it also comes with some challenges and risks. You know, if you're relying too much on those tools to take care of a lot of the more traditional engineering and manufacturing activities. But you're right. Things are moving very, very quickly. It seems more quickly now than I can remember in the past.
Does anything come to your mind, top of mind, in terms of a couple of key examples of this technology that is moving fast? It's almost like a revolution in our space. Anything comes to mind that you can share with us?
Yeah, I think just using agentic AI for development processes, it's really fast tracking a lot of traditional quality management processes. So development of requirements or doing risk analysis or even doing like competitive landscaping, the tools and the accessibility that we have now through using like Cloud Code, for instance, we can collect so much more data and do such deeper analysis in a much more rapid period of time. So I'm using a lot of those tools myself in order to explore various medtech processes that can be accelerated. And it's been amazing to see what can be. But back to that point earlier, it also comes with a couple of challenges. There's the question around, are we relying too much on these tools to do our work? And I'm also involved in engineering education at the University of Pennsylvania. And in that context, as an educator, I wonder, is using all of these AI tools, is it sort of depriving people of some of the some of the essential learning, the mechanics of how to do things if we're using these tools too heavily? So
Mhm.
There's pros, but there are also some things that I think we need to be careful about.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll touch on that in our conversation today. And it's, as you mentioned this, I find it quite ironical because it seems to me that critical thinking is even more important now than ever. And because of over reliance on these tools, we are probably losing our critical thinking. So we'll have to be quite vigilant about this. Now, Eric, you are right. I know that in the medtech space, probably over 1,200 medical devices which are enabled by AI and machine learning have been cleared or approved by the FDA. So this trajectory is going to continue. It's going to grow. It's going to grow fast. In this context, I think this conversation about safety and risk is broader, I believe, than just being in compliance, which is exactly where most of us focus our attention in our day-to-day work. But given your background and your experience where you are, I really want to talk about safety and risk in a broader context. So first, let us talk about how you see the topic of safety broadly in this whole space.
Sure. So, I mean, there's safety, which probably comes mostly in the clinical sense, right? When we're thinking about safety, it's related to patient safety, and that's paramount when we're thinking about, developing a medical device, identifying all of the hazards that could arise, and thinking about, how that could translate into patient harms. So that's sort of woven into the way that most people develop medical devices. But I think, more broadly, if there's not, business viability, if there's not overall viability, then these technologies that could prove to be, very clinically beneficial won't even make it to market. Mm-hmm. Or if they do get to market, then they may not stay there. It may not be sustainable. So there's sort of a different level of safety or a different aspect that's important to consider. And it's really more around adoption and business sustainability and those aspects.
No, I think you are absolutely right. And I just want to remind everybody that safety is not just risk. And we have seen those definitions. Even ISO 14971 talks about that. It is the balance between the benefits and risk. And we have to think about everything. So guys, if you're just joining us now, welcome. First of all, I'm so excited to welcome you once again to this LTR session. My guest today is Eric Sugalski, and we are talking about the concept of safety in a broader technological and regulatory context. But please know that this is not a webinar or a lecture. This is a conversation, and you are a part of it. So as you listen to it, as you think about these topics, something comes into your mind, please feel free to share that as a comment in the chat, ask a question, or share your perspective. What do you think? How do we begin to think about safety and talk about safety to senior executives who are mostly focused on business results for good reasons? How do we talk about that? So, Eric, let's continue our conversation. I think you were right. We have to start thinking about safety in a broader sense. I want to ask you, of course, we generally talk about safety from a patient perspective, regulatory compliance perspective, but there is a side to it which I have started thinking about recently, and I call that safety-led innovation. Innovation which is driven by safety in mind as a foundation, because that creates a strong foundation for business growth. How do you feel about that? And does anything come to mind?
I think it's an interesting paradigm, and it's different than how I've thought about things in the past, Naveen. But I think it makes sense. When we're looking at innovation, we're often focused on things that are new, and oftentimes things that are different. But when we're developing medical devices, the newness, it always introduces some uncertainty. And, with that uncertainty comes safety. And so, safety could relate to some of the clinical aspects, but also, as we just discussed, commercial, technical, other kinds of aspects also. So I think it's an interesting way of kind of tying these two pieces together that most people don't think about innovation and safety. You usually don't say those words in the same sentence.
Yeah, but let's double click on this and peel this layer a little bit. Let's walk away from medical devices for a moment. Let's talk about Subaru. It's an automotive company. It's a great brand. I purchased a Subaru for my daughter only because the way they position it, the way they talk about their activities and goals in their annual reports, they see the value of safety as a driver of competitive advantage. And I want to bring this up and ask you if you have come across something like that in our space, medical devices, pharma, where the conversation in the boardroom is about how can we be seen as caring about safety more than our competition?
Yeah, I think it varies depending on the size of the company and how established they are. I think, as you point out, larger organizations, pharma, medical device companies that are really thinking about kind of building a brand in a market, similar to how Subaru has established this brand of being a very trustworthy and safety-focused brand. I think some of the larger companies are trying to develop those types of brands. I think that smaller companies, they aim to do that, but they may not have the same resources as larger companies to do more extensive testing as needed for kind of those safety certifications. But then also just the sort of the branding that goes along with that costs a lot of additional, requires a lot of additional resources. So, I mean, my experience has been largely with the smaller companies, trying to help them, develop traction in the marketplace. And I think that safety is a really critical aspect for them, obviously getting through their regulatory authorization, but then also in the post-market, making sure that if there are issues, they're being addressed as quickly as possible through post-market surveillance and things of that nature.
Sure. We have a comment here, which I think is interesting. Let's talk about that a little bit. Safety study starts at the preclinical stage of the product development. Let's talk about that a little bit. Of course, we plan a lot for these clinical studies. We seem to be focused on generating data that will satisfy the FDA so we can go to market. But talk about how you see the conversation around safety when we are planning our clinical development.
Sure. I think that it starts with understanding and thinking through the clinical benefit and the clinical risks. As you pointed out earlier, getting a product, a medical device to the market is really sort of a balance of those two and ensuring that the benefits outweigh those risks. And so when we're building out a medical device at the front end, we do need to be not only thinking about the innovative aspects, but also thinking about what could go wrong. What are some of the downsides that could arise, whether they're based on the product or based on procedural differences that arise in using a new innovative type of product. So I agree with the comment that, safety does needs to be considered very early on in product development. And I think that when done well and when used kind of proactively in putting together requirements and doing very early hazards analyses, it can serve as a guiding tool to make sure that you're headed down the right path and to ensure that you're thinking about these things up front. On the flip side, what often happens with a lot of smaller companies, these activities, they get sort of backloaded and almost treated as just an afterthought. These are the boxes that we need to check. These are the things that we need to do. And as a result of that sort of deference to these types of activities, it results in these big redo loops that occur where when you didn't think about these activities at the front end and they come up late in the game, all of a sudden we have to go back to the drawing board and change fundamental aspects of the design. So I fully agree that you need to be considering safety, risk, as well as, the innovation at the front end. You can't wait until the product is already designed.
And I think you made a comment, which I want to emphasize once again, is to tie this into requirements development very early on. And I think that the very first design review you should have a robust conversation about safety related requirements. And if you're not having those conversations, I think it's up to us to kind of raise our hand and say, have we done enough to make sure our requirements are right? So Eric, I want to actually make this a little bit more tangible for everybody. You mentioned that you now serve as a fractional VP of engineering at small startups. So I guess you are involved in almost all aspects of development, whether it's engineering or safety or regulatory or quality. Share with us your real world experience in terms of how you communicate major issues, major opportunities, challenges to the senior executives, and if you have found some insights that we can share with our audience today.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges that we have in MedTech is that it's a fairly siloed industry, and we have people that kind of come from an engineering background, and typically they stay in an engineering background, and people that are in the regulatory domain, they typically stay in the regulatory domain, and the folks on the commercial side rarely work with the early engineers to figure out what the product should be. We have all of these silos that take place. And I think that that's one of the biggest challenges that we have, is that in order to develop a medical device, you need to be kind of looking at things much more holistically. And if we have the engineers just working in their own bubble, the chances are they're going to, have a very different scorecard than the regulatory people. And the regulatory people are going to have a totally different scorecard than the commercial people.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I've found in small companies and large companies alike is that, this silo effect really results in a lot of wasted effort, a lot of rework that happens. And in many cases, we have younger companies that are listening to people on the regulatory side that are very experienced in their one domain, but their scorecard is focused on how do I get this product to the market as quickly as possible and as efficiently as possible. Whereas the commercial people, maybe their scorecard is different. They're more looking at how do I get to my first, 10 million in sales or whatever that number is. And so breaking down those barriers and getting teams to work a little bit more closely together, I think that is what needs to happen in the boardroom as well as in early stage MedTech. When you're forming the product, it can't just be done, with engineers alone in the room. You really need to be kind of thinking about all of these aspects together.
Sure. I think that makes a lot of sense. Now, I know, a lot of people who are very passionate in this field because that's why they enter this field. And I've personally spoken to a lot of people who work in small startups and innovative companies. And many times they struggle. They say, I'm looking at this and I have some concerns about risk and safety, and I'm struggling to bring this message up to the senior executives so that they will pay enough attention to it. Has that been your experience? And if so, what would be your advice to such passionate people to be more effective?
Yeah, it's a great question. I have seen that quite a lot. And I think that sometimes quality and risk focused people do not get the sort of credit and the seat at the table that they need and that they deserve. And I think sometimes it comes as a result of not getting involved as early enough at the front end as possible. If quality people are really relegated to fixing problems after they've already occurred, there's only so much that they can do. And fixing those problems is critical, obviously. But if we can get more quality, safety-focused, risk-focused people involved earlier in the process, I think that their role becomes more strategic. It's less corrective and it's more guiding. It's more educating the team that these are the things that we need to be thinking about. This is how we need to be doing things differently. And so shifting from kind of that reactive mode of quality fixes problems into something that's more of quality reduces waste, quality drives business efficiency, reduces safety-related issues that could translate into business challenges down the road. I think we need to shift that role into something that's much more strategic than how it's currently fairly tactical in many cases.
I hear you, Eric, but I'm also hearing you say, I think if I pay attention to what you're saying, is that we can't also expect this to happen on its own from the top. Sometimes we also have to broaden our perspective and say, if we are receiving pushback on our proposals for improving quality or improving safety, let's take a step back and ask the question, how can I bring this forward in a way that facilitates a better conversation instead of just saying, no, you figure it out, or we don't have money, we got to go to market first. So what I'm hearing you say is that it's also partly on us. And I just want to make sure that message resonates. And perhaps you could share your experience from your career. If you had any early struggles in communicating these aspects to your clients or your senior executives, and if you picked up a few tricks, I would love to have you share how you overcame this and whether we can learn from that.
Well, I think you're right, Naveen, to say that this is not, leadership is not just going to appoint a new role or kind of a leadership seat to quality. The quality and safety and risk people need to, kind of help navigate this and figure out how they position themselves within organizations in more of that proactive way. I think a lot of it comes down to translating risk and safety related issues into business factors, right? So like if we can talk in terms of, if we don't correct this issue now and we think about this, what the consequence of this could be down the road in manufacturing, what is the penalty of time that we're going to experience there? How does that translate into lost revenues that we could experience? And so putting it in a business context, I think is one way to get the attention of the leadership within an organization. Companies, exist for the most part to generate revenue, profit, equity for shareholders. Of course, we need to make sure that we're developing safe and effective medical products as the output. But at the end of the day, we also need to make successful businesses. And so if quality and safety and risk focused people can put their work more in a business context, then I think they're going to have a lot more success.
Mm-hmm. That's absolutely a great advice. Now, the challenge there is we don't learn these things in school. Nobody teaches us. We learn Six Sigma, we learn statistics, we learn data analysis, we learn presentations. We don't learn this. How do we go about acquiring these new skills, Eric? Do you have any suggestions?
Yeah, I think that's true of most things in MedTech. I mean, nobody goes to school for MedTech, right? It's something that we have to learn in the field, whether you're focused on quality or regulatory. We learned some basics in engineering, but it's really up to the individual to kind of pay attention to some of these cross-disciplinary areas, to dive in and to kind of seek out the materials and the expertise that's going to give them maybe their own competitive advantage within their organization. I think that, these opportunities, generally, they don't just fall on your lap. You need to be fairly proactive in seeking them out and building your own knowledge.
Yeah, I really appreciate this. I think this is a real call to action to all of us, especially in today's environment where we know AI is moving fast and there are many, many tasks that AI could probably be deployed to do a lot better than most of us. So it's not necessarily a threat, but I think it's an opportunity for us to even broaden our perspective and learn afraid of using AI to learn and broaden our horizons. And today I'm going to share with you guys an announcement that I hope you'll be excited about that. So Eric, I know time is flying and we are already running short on time. I want to switch gears and ask you to share your work that you are doing building a community called MedTech Mindset. I'm very curious about it. And I hope everyone in the audience will also take a look at that. So tell us about how you got started, what it is about, and what is your vision about this company?
Yeah, thanks so much for bringing that up, Naveen. So MedTech Mindset is a new community. It is outside of LinkedIn. You can find it by going to medtechmindset.com, and it's hosted on this platform called School, SKOOL. But the idea behind it is that it's kind of more of a close-knit community that is just focused on MedTech. So when we're in LinkedIn, it's a huge community, and a lot of times what you see on LinkedIn is kind of celebrating wins and kind of achievements that may have occurred at the personal or the corporate level. And those things are great. But oftentimes LinkedIn isn't the place to debate topics or to learn or to get into the nitty gritty regulatory strategies or commercial strategies or safety issues. And so MedTech Mindset is a focused community for medical device innovators and professionals that really want to have that deeper conversation about these details of medtech. So if that sounds interesting, then you should check it out. It's still new. We have about 100, just over 100 people in the community right now. So it's small, it's close knit. We have regular calls where people bring up topics and we do case studies and things of that nature. You should check it out if you're interested, and hope to see.
Yeah, we can share a link in the show notes for this podcast. Now, Eric, we have a great comment here which I don't want to ignore, so I want to read this from Chandra Mohan. He's saying, "I have used daily triage stand-up meetings to brief safety and quality issues to the attention of senior executives." This fantastic idea, Chandra Mohan. I'm going to reach out to you and ask you to share more about this. This is so fascinating. With that, Eric, we are almost at the end, and I'm gonna give you a couple of minutes to just think about what we have discussed today and maybe synthesize that in 2 or 3 key bullet points for us. In the meantime, I'm going to share this announcement that I was talking about earlier with all of you. This is about a platform I have developed using AI. It's called LTR Risk Coach. Many of you know that at Let's Talk Risk, we are all about helping us become better at applying these principles. But how do we do that? We go to classroom, we get some training, we get a certificate, but nobody tells us how to actually apply. This becomes even more critical when the data is sparse and the problem is very difficult. So that is why LTR Risk Coach exists. And that's why I worked on it. It's actually an AI-powered, what I call thinking partner. It's a conversational thinking partner. It's a coach for medtech professionals. And it's not to replace our expertise. It is designed to organize thinking, challenge assumptions, and create options for better decision making. And I have built it using my own knowledge acquired over the last 10 years, building these what I call training sources or knowledge sources on which this AI powered platform is trained. The foundational platform is ChatGPT. So it is based on that. I have not built an LLM, but I have trained this LLM exclusively on my content. It doesn't go out anywhere else to answer your query. And if you follow Let's Talk Risk on my Substack, I actually suggest several prompts you can use to start having a conversation with the LTR risk coach. We talked about how to pitch a risk-related topic to senior executives, and that could be a perfect prompt for you. Right now, it is available to my subscribers on a limited launch basis. So if you are interested in this, please reach out to me, and I'll share more details with you. With that, Eric, the floor is yours. Please share 2 or 3 key takeaways with us.
Yeah, thanks, Naveen. So if I was to boil this down to, a few points, number one, it would be recognize the silos that exist in the medtech industry. Look for them, and you will find them. They are there, and the people within each of these silos have a very different lens and a different rubric that defines how they view success. So that's the piece. The second piece is recognize that a lot of these disciplines require a proactive mindset to go out and learn these different aspects. And they're probably going to fall outside of your domain, the area that you've spent time building your career to date. So be proactive. That's point number 2 in learning these aspects. And then the third key takeaway, I think, is try to translate risk and safety and these other subjects into business terms. Can you get these in terms of revenue or lost time or wasted effort? If you can translate into business terms, I think it converts your role into something from more of a tactical role into a role that is much more strategic, that might garner the attention of the leadership team.
Yeah, wow, that's amazing. I think it's such a simple list, and I think you have given us a little bit of a script here that we can follow to enhance our leadership skills and increase our influence. So, guys, I hope it has been useful to you. Recording will be available soon on my Substack, so sign up. I want to thank all of you for joining once again. It is always a pleasure to have you guys participate in this conversation. Thank you, Eric, for taking the time to share your insights with us, and I wish you all the best in your venture.
Thank you, Naveen. It was a pleasure.